here's, so ColoradoHempSolutions.com is us. Project CBD is a wonderful resource. WHO.int is World Health Organization International. And I could go on and on with the scholarly research articles and how they're held. The University of Palermo, the University of Madrid, most of the research coming out of Israel. The international community has been at this for a while. So a lot of the breakthroughs start with a finding that may have happened 30 years ago. And now with new technology and with new techniques, those guys will go back and try to repeat those findings, and in doing so, find some other thing that may become even more important than the original findings from the 70s and 60s and 80s. But there's lots of information out there. I try not to spend a lot of time on the websites or the articles that are sponsored by a company. I think that just in the last few years, there's started to be enough grant money to where these independent studies are going to be the most important to be able to really truly grow consumer confidence and respect in the nutraceutical industry in general. But that is, I think that's it. Is that it? I think that's it. So questions, please.
Were you at the farmer's market this summer?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I bought some CBD oil for my dog.
Yeah.
And because he has arthritis in his legs and his paws. And I used it, and he is much better.
It is.
And I use the CBD oil on certain parts that hurt, for arthritis. And it works. I got it out and palisaded, and it's called Root of It All. And I've been using that. But yours is a different one?
Yeah, no, our brand is Colorado Hemp Solution. The pet products are Moose's Magic.
Right.
But in looking at a label, the first thing to look for is it a full spectrum offering, or is it a CBD isolated offering? So that's the first thing to look at when comparing prices, efficacy, is that. So I'm not familiar with that outfit, but it doesn't mean that they don't do a good job.
Could you explain the difference between the two once again, real quickly?
Absolutely. So full spectrum would be having as much of that plant extract stay together. So the initial extraction happens through solvent. We have what we call crude oil. And then we'll take that, either use that crude oil into those products or take it through one more level of distillation, not separation, not isolation. So when you're dealing with a CBD only, you'll hear THC free. If you're dealing with THC free, 99 times out of 100, that is an isolated CBD product. So they're taking crystalline isolate, 99 or 95 to 100%. I've never seen 100%, but 95 to 99.8% CBD and CBD alone. They'll formulate that into products. That would be CBD isolate, whereas full spectrum would be anything. The most full spectrum derivatives are going to be those crude extractions. Those are also going to be the dirtiest. They're going to have the most chlorophyll, and I don't mean dirty in a chemical or in a nasty way. It's a dark, robust, it's not appealing visually, and it has a very, very nasty taste. So the second level of distillation is basically cleaning that oil up, and then that's what we use. We use a distillate in all of our products, a full spectrum distillate.
What is the advantage of the full spectrum versus?
That would be the entourage effect of the cannabinoids working together. So the more that we can leave these things as they were, as nature intended, the more effective they tend to be. So much so that last year, the world's biggest manufacturer of CBD isolate put a disclaimer on their page saying that 40% crude oil is as effective or more effective as a 99.8% CBD. And that was a CYA thing that they put on the website because they were starting to get sued. CBD in itself is it's a treatment for very specific things for very specific people. Sorry.
Could you tell us the difference between CBD oil and hemp oil?
So hemp oil, it depends. Cold pressed hemp oil, hemp seed oil, the hemp oil that you find in the grocery store in the next to the vegetable oil, That is from the seeds of hemp plants and then pressed, very similar to olive oil, peanut oil, canola oil. That is a food supplement that has very little, if any, CBD in it. You'll have companies call high CBD, distillates or crude oils. They'll call that hemp oil as well. So it's confusing, but we try to specify by saying it is a distilled high CBD hemp oil. But basically, think about lipids. The hemp seed oil is oil. It's pressed. It is fats. What we call oils that come from extraction from these plants actually don't have any lipids, very little lipids in them. They're actually cleaned out through a process called winterization to remove the water and the fats out of these. So it is a plant extract. Think about like lavender. Go ahead back there, in the very back. She's had her hand up for a way long time.
This new farm bill, that we're supposed to vote on, is that going to be detrimental to the CBD?
Well, I want to try to not get too political, but the moral of the story is what the Farm Bill does, as written, is it makes the industrial hemp program a program and not a pilot program. So therefore, there will be federal jurisdiction that will encompass, it's basically almost the same language as Colorado currently uses, but there will be federal oversight, potentially some tax stuff that could get interesting, but most importantly, we qualify for crop insurance. We don't have to worry about crossing state lines with derivatives. It legitimizes the industry. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? If you're in Colorado and you are doing this, if you were kind of greedy, I would say you would probably think that it would be a bad thing. However, it is going to increase demand so much. So kind of back to the isolate thing. The reason that isolate is made so much and it is so liquid, in that if I make all of my hemp fields into isolate, I can sell it really fast. It's because the big guys, the big grocery store chains, the Pepsis, the Cokes, the natural grocers, the Walmarts, the monsters in this room, they will choose lower effectiveness for less risk. To have 0% THC in a product, they'll put it on the shelves. Product right next to it, labeled the exact same, that has just a tiny bit of THC that might work twice as good, is way too scary. They view that as the controlled one, the class 1 controlled substance. Even though that CBD isolate that's in this other product is still a class 1 controlled substance. It's just, it doesn't have THC. So, I'm not sure if I answered your question entirely, but the moral of the story is the Farm Bill will certainly legitimize what we're up to. It will also certainly bring its own complications that we're not going to be able to tell until it does go through. And it's not looking good.
We had a position that said that you're not allowed to go into a state that does not have legalized marijuana with hemp or CBD. Is that true?
No, that is completely false.
So it has to be marijuana to be illegal.
And even, illegal is a relative term, but absolutely two totally separate things. We ship to all 50 states. There's 46 states that have it in their laws that they are either okay with selling it or they have a pilot program for growing it. So there are still 4 states that if we were more risk averse, we wouldn't ship to. The only place that we have not shipped to has been in Indonesia. Did I get you? Are you good? I'm sorry, I ignored your question.
No, I was just wondering, where you're growing it agriculturally, and having grown up around here and seen the marijuana grow on the ditch banks and stuff, how are you keeping your fields pure? I mean...
It is very difficult. That is a great question. It's not so much...
And seeing the ones growing from our people that throw their seeds out.
Absolutely. So it's not so much the ruderalis. Like we're a little bit too deserty to have a lot of the native hemp become an issue. It's the other hemp farmers. The idea that when we are creating really fine medicine, we need these plants to remain female. We really do. To be able to have consistency in how they create their chemicals within themselves, we need to have female plants. It is easier said than done. If you are not planting feminized genetics, clones or seed starts from feminized genetics, then you are basically saying, I'm going to walk that field every single day, and as soon as a male shows its sex, I'm going to kill it. And everybody's like, okay, I can do that. And then after about 5 or 6 days of walking the entire field, they get a little lazy and maybe just do it once every week. And then by then it's just so overwhelming. They're like, well, just, screw it. We'll just cut it all down and see if somebody will buy it. And it's tough, especially as you now are creating seeds, which if you're greedy, and greed is part of all of this, there's so many people that will harvest those seeds, and then they will market and sell those as solid genetics when they have no idea who that pollinator was. They have no idea in the strength of the individuals. So it's a difficult proposition.
So are you really having to fence your fields? And I mean, people can't walk through with the other seeds on their shoes.
No, it's not so much the seeds, it's the pollen. So it is very difficult. It's not so easy as fencing it off. And it's not a deal killer in that if your field is pollinated, it is a tremendous yield loss, 100% yield loss. And you also have the buyers, so if you're not making your own derivatives, the buyers will reduce that seed weight against what your flower weight was. So it's a direct decline in revenue. The flower that it does produce is still going to be fairly consistent to where that genetic should be. It's just there's not as much of it. And during the extraction process, if that seed is broken, so if you have a seeded crop, if it goes into a grinder, for instance, or a hammer mill to be able to go into the extraction technology, that will open up that seed and let that hemp seed oil, which is a lipid, which is a fat, into your